And hello and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Darren Hyman. Today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we go front and center with several issues. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, and we'll learn what services Visiting Nurse Service of New York is providing to those facing emotional and mental stress. And welcome back here to Open. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States. The COVID-19 pandemic has added intense emotional and mental stress to the lives of many people across the world, and the economy a significant source of stress, with people being laid off from jobs as well as unable to find employment. Grief for loved ones who've fallen ill or died as a result of COVID-19. Children may also be experiencing increased negative emotions such as stress, anxiety, fear, anger, frustration, and grief. And joining us to share a little bit more and provide some insight is a licensed clinical social worker and the Associate Director with Community Mental Health Services at VNSNY, Deirdre DeLeo. And Deirdre, good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Darren. Appreciate it. And such an important topic to talk about.
It is an important topic to talk about, and I think even more so with COVID-19 and us still trying to navigate. We've got reopening across New York City and really across the nation. People are still trying to struggle to get back to a sense of normalcy. But I know one of the things that we talk about in this is not only people being infected by the virus, but then the collateral damage it's caused. And I know that suicide is one of those. So give me a little bit about what you're hearing within the community with regards to suicide rates and what's going on now.
Sure. Good question. Thank you. So, we are all experiencing the same stress, even though we're all sheltering in place at home and we're alone. We're all in this together. And we're still in the midst of this pandemic. So we don't have all the numbers, but we do have this one very interesting CDC study that came out in June, where 1 in 4 people between the ages of 18 and 34 seriously considered suicide. And 11% of everyone that was surveyed during this 1 week in June reported having seriously thought about suicide in the past 30 months.
That's an amazing and alarming statistic. Have we seen numbers like this before, or do we attribute this mostly to the COVID-19 pandemic?
So this is higher than the normal rates of suicidal ideation in the general population, yes.
And so when we talk about suicide, I know that many times people are caught off guard. And when we watch and we hear, whether it's celebrities or people that we may know, who actually take their life by suicide, the first thing that always happens is there's this great realm of surprise and shock, because for many people, sometimes we don't see it coming. So give us a little bit about what are some of those warning signs that the average person can look out for when you have a situation such as suicide as a potential?
Sure. So there are both verbal and nonverbal signs that someone is thinking about suicide. The easiest to spot is when someone's making statements, people are better off without me. I don't know why I'm living. I have nothing to live for. I can't go on anymore. Or they may say things such as, things are just never going to get better. Everything's hopeless. And hopelessness is the #1 indicator that someone is having suicidal ideation. You want to also pay attention. Does the person have a previous history of suicide attempts? That actually increases their risk. Someone who was very outgoing, very involved in life, and is now very withdrawn and isolated. They're keeping to themselves more. They're canceling on friends or plans. Harder to tell during COVID, but maybe somebody who would be making phone calls or doing video chats as we are, and is now starting to stop doing that. Someone who's giving away things that they hold very dear because they want to make sure that somebody else is going to value them when they're gone. A change in sleep or eating. And that could be either way. Somebody could be sleeping more than normal, or they could be sleeping less than normal. So just looking out for, people acting very differently. High-risk behaviors, doing things recklessly. I always talk about, that young adult who just steps out into traffic without looking because they don't care if they get hit by a car. These are the things that we can do, and there's 3 easy steps to take to help someone because we can all save a life.
Mhm. And and
All
and
right.
I'm no problem. It's probably a little technical breakup on this side too. But when you talk about those persons who are actually taking their life and suicide, you've got other people on the other side who are saying, "Listen, I want to take some steps to help someone." If you any of those categories that you've actually named, and you said a few of them, if a person is observing a loved one or a friend who are actually doing this, what should be their course of action when this happens?
So if everybody watching can remember, there's 3 very simple steps that they can do. And I'll just go through the steps and then I'll talk about them if that's okay. So the
Certainly.
steps are ask, listen, and get help. So if you're talking with a loved one, either in person or on the phone or via video, and you have any concerns that that person is thinking about ending their life, and it could be just as simple as, hey, I'm worried about you. You say these things. Are you thinking about killing yourself or committing suicide or any of the words that's comfortable for you to use? And then when that person answers, listen, it's very difficult and it's scary when you ask that question to have that person that you're talking to say, yes, I'm having those thoughts. But let that person talk. That's their experience. Don't try to tell them it's going to get better. Don't try to minimize it for them. Just simply listen. They're taking a big risk and they're probably also very relieved that somebody's asked them. They're living with these thoughts. And then the last step is get help. And it could be something as easy as doing a 3-way call with NYC Well, which is the 24-hour hotline for mental health and substance abuse issues here in New York City. And that number is 888-692-9355. And I highly recommend that when you're making that phone call with someone, stay on the phone with them for the whole time, because you never know, that person might have that brave moment and tell you they're having those thoughts. But then when they're on the phone with the counselor, they may actually disconnect the call before giving it any of their information. And NYC Well can then do a couple of different things. They'll speak to that person, they'll do a further assessment of the suicide risk, and they can make referrals. They can make referrals to community resources, especially to mobile crisis teams, which could be really helpful in this day and age.
You brought up mobile crisis teams, and actually that was my next question. You do have a mobile crisis unit, and I know that goes out to really help those in need. Give us a little bit about the mobile crisis unit and the work that it does in the community.
Sure. Our mobile crisis teams are trained mental health professionals that respond to emotional crises in people's homes. Or if that person wants to meet with somebody in the community, we can meet with them in a safe place in the community. Right now during COVID, because we are taking the pandemic extremely seriously, we're trying to do as much telephonic assessment first. So we would reach out to that person by telephone, talk to them about how they're feeling. We do a complete risk assessment with them, and then we would link them to community services. And much like I was saying for the get help step, we stay with them until they connect to services. So if somebody needs to go to an outpatient appointment, we would help them do that. If someone needs to get to an emergency room, we would go with them to the emergency room.
And give us, before we leave, again, you said those 3 steps, because we want to make sure there's awareness out there. If there's somebody out there that's watching this morning and they want to find out more about how they could actually help, since this is Suicide Awareness Month, please give us those 3 steps again, so that way somebody can be well informed.
Sure. So I just want to say that this is a public health concern and we can all save a life. So the steps are very simple. Ask somebody if they're having thoughts of wanting to die or kill themselves. Listen to what they say, and then help them get help and stay with them while they're getting it.
Well, we want to thank you so much for sharing with us, Deirdre, as we leave it here on this particular segment talking about suicide awareness. Definitely very important. And as we said in the lead, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And that's a pretty alarming number. But thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for talking about this very important topic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we will. And of course, we'll revisit it before the end of the month or the month is out again. A very important topic, as we said, if it's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, I think that we should do our due diligence in making sure that people are aware. Now, for more information, we do encourage you, please visit the website so that you can get all the information when it comes to suicide awareness and suicide prevention. The website, VNSNY.org. Now, if you want to pick up the phone and call, what you can do is you can call them at 1-800-675-0391. Again, that number, 1-800-675-0391. We encourage you, please don't go anywhere. We do have more open coming up right after this.